Hey everyone, big night of fights. UFC 171 this Saturday on pay-per-view. It is a stacked card. There's going to be a lot of answers to a lot of questions that fans may have about how the welterweights stack up against each other. It's exciting times for the 170-pound division. You have Jake Shields going against Hector Lombard. This is going to be a really big contrast in styles, a big clash of styles. You have Jake Shields, who his strong suit is in jiu-jitsu, pretty good wrestler as well, black belt under Cesar Gracie. He's been on a roll lately. He just had a huge win against Damian Maia. Before that, beat Tyron Woodley. A lot of people aren't excited to see Jake Shields fight. I don't happen to be one of them. I find his fights to be very strategically pleasing, and I don't have a problem with that. I'm not going to be the type of guy to convince people that he is exciting if they don't like his style already, but I will say that in any case, you really have to respect this guy's game. He's one of the best welterweights of all time, and he's really going to be put towards the test against Hector Lombard. Hector Lombard is going to compete in his second fight in the welterweight division as he drops down to 170 pounds once again. He really came from a storm from Bellator, was winning fights left and right, came from the Bellator circuit right to the UFC middleweight division, was a little bit unimpressive in his middleweight campaign in the UFC, but has since bounced back at 170 pounds. He had a very impressive, explosive performance against Nate Marquardt, just knocked him out, busted it open really early in the fight. This is... Hector Lombard is probably going to want to keep this fight standing. Jake Shields is probably going to want to get this fight to the ground. But Jake Shields has shown time and time again that he's pretty much the buffer of the division. This is a guy that can neutralize pretty much anyone with any skill set, no matter how good they are. He's been able to outstrike strikers, he's been able to out-wrestle wrestlers, and I would say he's been able to out-grapple grapplers, but he really is... I mean, I don't think he's gone against anyone that's a better grappler than himself. He really is top-notch. He's the cream of the crop in the division as far as grappling goes. He just out-grappled Damian Maia, and he's gonna have a lot to just a lot to prove. You know, can he be exciting? If you're asking me, it's can he continue to be successful when he doesn't have as much to prove as the other person might argue, but he needs to be exciting if he wants to get this title shot if he wins. And Hector Lombard, it's going to be even tougher for him to convince the UFC brass if he deserves a title shot, since this is only his second fight in the welterweight division. Stylistically, as I mentioned, striker versus grappler, kind of. Hector Lombard does have a background in judo, very serviceable grappler himself, good wrestling. This is not a guy that you're just going to have an easy time taking down. I don't believe he's been taken down much. I think Yushin Okami took him down, but other than that, he hasn't been taken down in a long time. Size-wise, these guys are going to be pretty evenly matched up against each other. They're both huge, massive welterweights. I definitely favor Jake Shields in this fight. I think Jake Shields, if he plays his cards right, doesn't even necessarily have to get takedowns left and right to win this fight. I think he's going to be able to. He's got a really deceivingly good single leg. If he gets the fight to the ground, he can just suffocate his opponents. He's got actually really offensive grappling. It might be easy for people to dismiss his grappling since he hasn't gotten any submissions yet in the UFC, but this guy's been going against killers. It's not exactly, it's easier said than done to get a submission when you start your UFC tenure going off against top 5 fighters in your respective division. I think that Jake Shields, though, if he can get on top, maybe get Hector Lombard tired in this fight, which won't be easy to do in only a 15-minute time frame, I think he could possibly pull off a submission, but I think your safe bet is going to be Jake Shields by decision, 29-28, possibly 30-27. Hector Lombard, if he wants to win this fight, he's got to knock out Jake Shields. I don't think that's going to happen. Jake Shields has got a legendary chin, one of the best chins the sport has ever seen. The only time he's ever been knocked out in a fight is a fight that I view to be a questionable, albeit very good knockout, a questionable stoppage against Jake Ellenberger. So Jake Shields, I feel, should win just a classic Jake Shields fight and boost himself prepared for the possible title contention. And then next on the card, you have Carlos Condit going against I just realized I made a mistake. I said 4 welterweight fights. I should have said 3, because I was also going to preview Miles Jury versus Diego Sanchez. Miles Jury versus Diego Sanchez. It's tough for Diego Sanchez to be in a fight that isn't super, super exciting. He's only had one fight that wasn't really exciting, and he was fighting with an infection. I view him to be a huge favorite on Saturday night against Miles Jury. Miles Jury is flawless in his UFC tenure and mixed martial arts record, minus the Ultimate Fighter, if you include that. In his last fight, he had a very disappointing performance despite getting the W. He was very lackluster in defeating Mike Ricci, who should have had a big advantage in the wrestling department, where he was able to take down Ricci on occasion. He didn't dominate as he did in his against his past opponents, where he just has a grueling top positional game, really, really good at scrambles. This guy loves the scramble, but that's one of the many reasons why I think he's going to be a big underdog against Diego Sanchez. Diego Sanchez he gets more energy off of scrambles. This guy is insane. He never gets tired. You can hit him as hard as you can, and he's going to keep coming forward. I don't know how he's never been knocked out. He's been hit with some heavy, heavy artillery. This guy just thrives off his scrambles as well. Very dynamic grappling game. Just a dynamic mixed martial artist. There isn't one area where I feel that Diego Sanchez is head over heels better than anyone at, but in this fight I think he holds a pretty comfortable advantage in all aspects of mixed martial arts, except for maybe the takedowns. But even if Jury is successful in taking down Diego Sanchez, I don't think he's going to be able to hold him down there. And do you really think he's going to be able to knock out Diego Sanchez? No one has been able to do it. I'd be very surprised if Jury is able to knock out Diego. I like Diego in this fight by KO. Miles Jury, he is perfect, but I don't really know how good his chin is, and Diego Sanchez does pack some firepower, and he never gets tired. I don't think that there's a fighter out there that isn't in the top 5 that isn't going to be taken into heavy waters in the lightweight division from Diego Sanchez, win or lose. This guy's going non-stop, 100%. There's really nothing more that can be said about this guy. I don't think that either guy is going to be close to title contention. Diego Sanchez is fresh off of getting completely destroyed, albeit in a fight-of-the-year performance against Gilbert Melendez, and Gilbert Melendez is possibly the uncrowned champ, arguably. It wasn't a fight that was really competitive. So Diego Sanchez should, at the moment, I view him as an upper-level gatekeeper. This guy's always training hard, always comes ready to fight, so I really look forward to an exciting fight in this one, which will be important for Miles Jury, given that he hasn't really had an exciting fight thus far in the UFC, despite some impressive performances. And then, okay, next up in the welterweight division, rivaling the title contention fight of Jake Shields and Hector Lombard, you're going to have Tyron Woodley against Carlos Condit. Both men have actually lost to Jake Shields in past bouts. Carlos Condit was in 2006. Tyron Woodley was just this past year. So Carlos Condit just has solidified himself as a top welterweight in the UFC the past few years. Very, very offensive fighter. He's never been knocked out in his mixed martial arts career. This guy has got, I mean, you want to talk about chins, he's right up there with Jake Shields. This guy, he's got a very good chin, and furthermore, he does not show when he's hurt. He's got very good defense. His offense, though, is really what's going to turn your head. He is just 100% killer, natural-born killer, although Cheese is a pretty good nickname for him. He's got massive, massive knockout power. One of the bigger knockout artists in the UFC welterweight division, and off of his back, he's very, very offensive. He can sweep you, he can submit you, he can elbow you, he'll cut you open. He is not a fun guy to go against, be it on top position, bottom position, or on the feet. Now, Tyron Woodley, I feel that he's got a lot of potential to win this fight. I've been going back and forth. If Tyron Woodley wants to turn this into a wrestling match, I could very easily see him getting on top of Carlos Condit anytime he wants to, pretty much in the fight. Carlos Condit's biggest flaw is his takedown defense. His takedown defense has been pretty abysmal for how long he's been fighting, but I say that with perhaps a silver lining, because taking down Carlos Condit has proven to be like opening Pandora's box in past bouts. This guy, as I just mentioned, is very, very offensive, be it from top or bottom position. So if Tyron Woodley wants to take down Carlos Condit, go for it. I don't think he's going to be very offensive. Tyron Woodley is not a finisher from top position. He kind of grinds out his opponents, lands an occasional elbow, maybe a punch. Doesn't really pass guard. And I think he's going to have a field day trying to pass guard of Carlos Condit, much less landing effective offense from Carlos Condit's guard. So obviously I view Carlos Condit as pretty good favorite in this fight. It wouldn't be outside the pale for Tyron Woodley to win this fight. I mean, Tyron Woodley does have very good knockout power himself. He just had a brutal knockout against Josh Koscheck. He had a very impressive knockout against Jay Haran earlier in his UFC 10 years first UFC fight. But Carlos Condit's a different animal. This guy doesn't get knocked out by anyone, and I'd be very surprised if Tyron Woodley was the first guy to stop Carlos Condit in the UFC. And so with that said, I think I like Carlos Condit by, I'd say, second round submission / KO. I definitely like him by finish. If it does go to the scorecards, I can actually see Tyron Woodley squeaking out a decision. Carlos Condit is a finisher. I believe he only has maybe one or two decision victories in his whole career. Maybe 3. No, 1 or 2. I don't know the exact number. I think it's, come to think of it, I think it's actually only 1, where he had against Hiromitsu Miura back in his WEC days. And Tyron Woodley, I mean, he's probably been practicing his ground game, his stand-up game, but Carlos Condit is a guy you just can't blink against, and I don't see Tyron Woodley being able to do that for 15 minutes straight. And then the main event, of course, the main event, Robbie Lawler versus Johnny Hendricks. Now, just to put this fight into perspective, this fight is just crazy. If you look at Robbie Lawler, this is a guy that was brought in by the UFC 11 or 12 years ago as a huge welterweight prospect. 11 or 12 years ago, I'm talking. He really flourished as well. He had some brutal knockouts. He knocked out Tiki Gosen in a brutal finish. Had some exciting fights at welterweight. Then he kind of got derailed by a lesser-known Pete Spratt just by getting leg kicked. And then, of course, Nick Diaz, in one of the better fights you'll ever see, knocked out Robbie Lawler, which is still the only time he's ever been knocked out in his career. Since then, he went outside of the UFC. He won a couple titles in lower promotions. He fought in Hawaiian Icon Sport, won a title there. And then he lost to Jason Miller. Then he went to Elite XC and won a belt over there, not beating any huge name opponents. Then he went to Strikeforce and both won and lost the title over there with some big fights. But near the end of his Strikeforce tenure, he was really showing a lost step in the game. He got beat easily by Jake Shields, got outstruck by Jake Shields and then choked out. He got just completely dismantled by Lorenz Larkin, who is a serviceable middleweight. Went to the UFC, dropped to welterweight, upsets Josh Koscheck, huge upset against Rory McDonald, both of which fights he was supposed to lose. And he finds himself in a welterweight vacant title fight. It's tough to not root for this guy. I don't really have a bias personally, but there's going to be a lot of people cheering for Robbie Lawler. This guy's just a throwback. He's pound for pound, possibly the hardest puncher in mixed martial arts. This guy's just a violent fighter. This is some straight up world star hip hop caliber finishes this guy has. Just look up some highlight reels of him, go on UFC Fight Pass, check out some older fights. This guy does not mess around. With that said, he's not a fish out of water off of his back. This guy's been fighting for well over a decade, but that's his biggest weakness. He's got good takedown offense. He finds himself in top position from time to time. He's actually got some very underrated ground and pound, but his takedown defense is really bad, and his submission offense has proven to be bad as well. Well, I shouldn't say has been in the past. He's shown a second wind ever since he moved to American Top Team in Florida and has been training with them. His grappling defense actually does look much improved, but as far as his wrestling, Johnny Hendricks is probably going to be able to take down Robbie Lawler anytime he wants in this fight, similar to Tyron Woodley against Carlos Condit. The only difference being Robbie Lawler does not have much of a submission game. I'm not even sure if Robbie Lawler has gotten a submission in his career. This guy prefers to stand and trade, maybe go on top of his opponent, slam them, and land some ground and pound. He's not going to be able to do that against Johnny Hendricks. Furthermore, Johnny Hendricks proved that he has the cardio prowess to go 25 minutes in a fight. This is going to be a tough fight for Robbie Lawler to win. I view Johnny Hendricks as a big favorite. In the stand-up department, Robbie Lawler is going to be the clear, I don't want to say favorite, but he's a more technical fighter. Stand-up, it's tough to say. Whatever you value more in stand-up, they're both very powerful fighters, but Johnny Hendricks covers a lot of ground with his left straight. His left cross. It feels like it just seems like he's on one side of the octagon and his punch is on the other. He just loops right in there. He generates massive power. He can knock out anyone, including Robbie Lawler if he connects. I don't think that's going to be the safe bet, though. I think that if he's smart, he's going to mix it up brilliantly as he did against Carlos Condit. Implement his powerful strikes, but also use them to transition into nice segues into takedowns, some top positional control. I feel that most of the fight's probably going to be Robbie Lawler on his back. Don't sleep on Robbie Lawler, though, because unlike other big punchers in the sport, what Robbie Lawler has shown that he can do is he can finish fighters when he's dead tired. He did that against Frank Trigg in Icon Sport. He can do that against anyone. This guy could be half asleep and he can go with an overhand right or flying knee and knock you out. So he's going to be dangerous for the entire 25 minutes of the fight if it goes that long. I don't feel that Johnny Hendricks has got the submission chops to finish Robbie Lawler, but I do think it's going to be a pretty one-sided fight, albeit a very exciting one, though. This is going to be a very volatile matchup where either fighter can really win by any method. It wouldn't be outside the pale at any given time, save for maybe a Robbie Lawler submission. I wouldn't be surprised in any outcome of the fight. With that said, though, as I just mentioned, I think the safe bet here, should be a pretty big favorite, would be Johnny Hendricks. Although Johnny Hendricks has been shown that he does like to stand and trade. So if he fights smart, should be smooth sailing for him. But if he lets his ego get to him, tries to outpunch a big, legendary, masterful puncher of Robbie Lawler, he could be on ice skates, whatever that expression is. So I look forward to a big night of fights. If you ask me for my money, I feel that the winner of Jake Shields I feel that if Jake Shields wins, he should get the next title fight, simply because he just recently beat Tyron Woodley, and he has defeated Carlos Condit in his career, not to mention Carlos Condit is on a 2-fight losing streak. And furthermore, I feel that if Hector Lombard upsets Jake Shields, though, I don't feel that he's next for a title shot. Then I think you have to give it to the winner of Carlos Condit, Tyron Woodley, or perhaps even Roy McDonald in that case. So, should be an exciting night of fights. I'm really looking forward to it. It's a really stacked card.